And let me move now the agenda to the next one, which is a little more interesting because now we're splitting into two Zooms. So let me be pretty clear now. So those of you who are looking at agenda, how it's structured, this is the parallel sessions. So the sessions 3A and then following 4A and 5A are in this room where we are right now. Yeah. So and we're going to start this in a couple of minutes. A couple of minutes. Why? Because I would like to ask everyone who wants to follow the session 3B and later on 4B and 5B. It's actually in a different room, in a different Zoom webinar room. The link is here. You don't have to type it in. You have it in the email as a registered attendee, and I will also now put it in the chat here. So you're gonna get this link. So the link with the 1 to 2 at the end are the sessions B. So if you're interested in the sessions B, there's going to be e-democracy part now and then so on. Just click on this link that I pasted in the chat, and you will be transformed there. So, and while you're going there, I will slowly introduce the session 3A now that we have here, and I see David also already joining us here. So we're going to have even more speakers now in this session. So we're going to have 6 of them. Starting with, as you can also already see, Mr. David Osimo, Director of Research at the Lisbon Council. His keynote, and let me stop sharing here so that will give him the right to prepare his presentation, is called Service Design, the Holy Grail. A catchy title, so we're all looking forward to it. Before I give you totally the floor and stage, David Osimo, let me just reiterate, you are remaining in the A session, session 3A. So if you want to go to the session 3B and so on, it's a different link. You have it in the chat. Just click it there and you will be moved to this other room where they are also starting right now. So with that, let me give the stage to David Osimo from the Lisbon Council.
Thank you very much, Mali. Thanks, everyone. Can you see my screen correctly?
We can hear you. We can see you well. We can see the screen. Everything is good.
The screen is full, right? It's not the one with my notes that I don't want to reveal.
It's full, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. This session has a title that, is risk becoming a buzzword. So we need to be very clear about what we are talking about. What are the opportunities? Why service design matters? And it's not just another concept that we throw at digital government like we have done in so many years. And I'm firmly convinced of that. I'm firmly convinced that service design is a game changer, and not because digital government needs it, but because we see service design everywhere, in every sector of the economy. It is a core topic. Service and product design are a core topic of any business school, any company, any service or product that is being developed. So when it comes to service design, now we've been talking about this for a while in Europe. And in fact, public administration are widely aware of this. We did some research over the last 3 years in the context of 2 European projects, COA and user centricity. And one of the survey that my colleagues from Maastricht University did revealed that 85% of public administration that innovate claim to do that by involving users. This is stunning, like, everyone does it. But the reality is that in most cases, this is just brainstorming. Prototyping is still, things like prototyping is still rare. It's more than that. Every strategy, many governments have implemented specific policy tools, not just practices. Co-creation is mentioned in digital strategies. This is the result, again, of another study we did called the state of co-creation, and we can see it everywhere. Methods, guidelines, experiments, citizens' idea, and digital teams. I mean, these things are becoming mainstream. They are seen in many countries and even in cities. So the question then, I think we have to ask ourselves a very hard question. And it's true that digital government in Europe has improved very strongly over the last years. It's undeniable, and we can see that. But the results, the reality is still that few citizens use it. This is a recent chart we published in the latest policy briefs. shows the difference between those who do e-commerce and those who do e-government, those who use e-commerce and use e-government. And the problem is not that there is a gap, and it's normal. I mean, we all buy more than from the private sector than we ask for documents to the public sector. But the problem is that this gap has increased despite years of investment and years of strategies, years of regulation. And this is a source of worry, especially if you look at the latest year. The data come from the same survey that is conducted by Eurostat on citizens. And you can see clearly the bump in e-commerce adoption, and because of COVID, because of the pandemic, you cannot see the COVID, you cannot see the gap in e-government adoption. This is a source of worry. I think we should be aware of this. Despite all this investment in service design, in service, in standards, in digital teams, progress is still going slow. And this is not about front line innovation. Service design is very mature, it's very codified. We have service standards, we have user research method, we have user experience standards, design guidelines, templates, and toolkit. And these are starting to really be available in many countries. I think that the OECD catalogs 31 toolkits for service design. So, you know, the knowledge is there. So what is the missing piece? Why do we have this gap? And I argue here, and this is my main point that I want to make today, is that the problem is enforcement. The problem is not a question of funding, it's a question of power. And decision makers are too often using their political capital for securing budget rather than focusing on power, which is, you know, more challenging and less visible. So what does this mean? This means empowering the designers, giving clear role. We have seen this in countries where, with digital commissioners, for instance, in Italy, receiving extraordinary roles and being able to build a digital team. We also see the importance of adopting long-term stable strategies so that not every government comes in with new ideas, because this hinders the trust, and you will never get all the agency, not to mention local administration, to follow certain standards, certain design standards, certain service design standards, if this is just, you know, yet another strategy that will change in a couple of years. So we need long-term stable strategy. But here comes what I mean by enforcement. We need more than that. We need to monitor the implementation of service standards. So we know that service standards are, or design guidelines are available in many countries, but we need to enforce it and we need to monitor the implementation of service standard. Not just of service standard, but of any standard we have, even interoperability standard, even the European interoperability standard needs better monitoring and more careful hands-on follow-up. And the UK has a very interesting experiment or service, which I particularly like, which is they have a periodic assessment of every service and to what extent they comply with the service standard that they developed. There is a very famous UK digital government service standard. What is interesting is they monitor the implementation. They have a follow-up, a qualitative follow-up, where they check one by one whether they adopt user research, whether they iterate, whether they work in the open, and so on and so forth. Another tool which has been emerging, and I think Italy has been using it, is making funding for public initiatives conditional on the implementation of standards. So including design standards and design guidelines. So if you follow the guidelines that are being given, you will get automatically the funding that is needed to upgrade your website. And fifth in this list, and it's something that I'm particularly keen on, is open data on adoption. Publishing open data on the adoption of digital service is a powerful leverage to ensure that services are designed with the needs of the users in mind. it's not just a problem of accountability, but we know that accountability doesn't work only ex post because it enables you to monitor. But when you, as a decision maker, you know that any data on whether your services are used will be public, then your choice, this influences your choices, this influences which projects are selected, and to what extent really user needs are put at the center of digital government. So I think we enter a new age of service design, and a maturity age, where we no longer have to talk about principles and standards. We have had the Tallinn Declaration with the user centricity principles in the annex. We have service standards that are clearly consolidated, and not just, and this is not just about the UK government or the Anglo-Saxon world. We have Italy, we have Denmark, we have the Czech Republic, we have a lot of work being done on design guidelines. We enter a new age and we need to focus on enforcement. Now, why is it? Because usually, and we have heard this today, there is a kind of a fake dichotomy between kind of distributed digital government where everyone does their own initiatives and centralized initiatives, like a centralized portal like in Denmark or in the UK, where services are centralized in a single portal. And obviously this has to do with the level of decentralization in the country and with many other factors that are outside the remit of digital government that are a fact. So what happens is often you have a hierarchy-based, a strong top-down approach where services are centralized and these are really usable because the interface is consistent, it always works the same way. And users can have a predictable relationship with the predictable interaction. Or on the other hand, there are systems that are more consensus-based, including with standards, which ultimately result in not very user-centric because the implementation of the standard is really patchy. And the standards often remain, on paper, or in this case, on the website, but they are not implemented. And I think we have to be aware that there is a risk in this trade-off, because ultimately, this could lead, if this is the choice, then the future is more towards centralized portal and services. But this is not the choice. The choice is not between decentralized and not user-centric and user-centric and area-based. There is an alternative, and the alternative is effectively enforce standards. If it's not just about having service standards, having design guidelines, it's about enforcing them. And we have talked about the ways that this can be enforced, and there are many. But the issue is, if we don't enforce the standards, then we don't actually need standards. They are useless. They are just, theory. They're something that is, it's useful if anyone wants to do something following the standards, but ultimately it will not reach the scale that is needed. And this is the ultimate problem of European digital government: scale. Because scale means large adoption, predictable interaction, means that every citizen and every city and every region of Europe and every territory, even the remote territory, are brought in the digital transition. So this is the main point I want to make, and I'm happy to follow up in the discussion later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Davido Simo. Now, before I invite next one, Marco, just allow me to show one more thing. Actually, as part of the keynote part to this session 3A, we prepared a short video. Okay, we actually asked the end users, how do they feel, what's their comment on, on the services of e-government, what we're talking. So are we including them in the co-creation and the red line here? So, and we put together a couple of minutes of movie, and this will also fuel and inspire us, into commenting this. So this is a snapshot of how Slovenians users feel about it and what they're saying. So let us hear that.
The main issue that I have is not knowing everything that is available to me and jumping from platform to platform trying to achieve something.
The government can help citizens to use e-public services by organizing free education.
More IT courses focused on practical application should be organized in the local environment.
It is difficult for me to follow the progress in IT technology. Without the help of my children, I couldn't manage it.
I was pleasantly surprised of how easy that was, actually.
Meni se zdijo najbolj učinkovite aplikacije, ki temeljijo na biometriji. Tudi naše stranke imajo raje mobilne aplikacije kot pa spletne.
Zakaj sta torej nujna digitalizacija demokratičnih procesov in uzakonjene sistema e-peticij? Najmanj zato, da nam o predaji štafete ne bo nerodno, ko nas bodo vsi ogorčeni spraševali, zakaj lahko na primer Latvijci elektronsko podpisujejo peticije svojemu parlamentu že od leta 2011.
Z elektronsko storitvijo e-vročanje sedaj prevzema priporočeno pošto v uradnih zadevah hitro, kjerkoli, kadarkoli, s pomočjo prenosnega računalnika ali mobilnega telefona. Povsem enostavno se z osebnim certifikatom prijavim v varni predal e-uprave in prevzamem svoje dokumente.
Single sign-on is sometimes not working as expected. Also, connectivity and navigations through different systems can be quite complex.
Pridobitev digitalnega identifikacijskega potrdila bi lahko potekala tudi preko videoklica in ne le v živo na upravi.
Želel bi si, da bi bil elektronski dostop do raznih potrdil, ki jih izdaja država, enostavnejši, tako kot je enostaven dostop do COVID potrdila.
Kot študent, ki se izobražuje v tujini, sem imel pozitivno izkušnjo, ko sem ugotovil, da moram prijaviti spremembo svojega začasnega naslova v tujini. Na e-upravi sem pravo vlogo našel, jo izpolnil in tudi oddal vse skupaj v manj kot 5 minutah.
Največji oviri pri uporabi elektronskih javnih storitev vidim v dejstvu, da državljani ne poznamo verjetno vseh, kar pomeni še več promocije za njih, in pa v dejstvu, da vsi državljani niso vajeni elektronskega poslovanja in je potrebno razmisliti, kako te storitve približati tudi njim.
Ko enkrat uspeš pridobiti in si namestiti svojo digitalno identiteto, je uporaba e-uprave in drugih e-storitev države dokaj enostavna stvar. Ko boste to uredili, bo nas uporabnikov vse več, pa še bolj zadovoljni bomo.
Digitalizacija, izpolnjevanje obrazcev, oddajanje vlog, delo na daljavo, komunikacija s šolo, spletno bančništvo. Brez digitalnih storitev si danes ne predstavljam več aktivnega državljanstva.
So these were our Slovenian users, as you could hear from some of them speaking in native Slovenian language, which is nice to hear on an international conference. So basically a good snapshot of how do they feel. It was a mix of constructive feedback, criticism, and also positive experiences with it, which is giving us a little bit of a guideline into this session. So coming up next, so we have heard David Osimo, and now next one is Mr. Marco Maria Padrazzo. He's already here with us. Let me just briefly introduce him as he is setting up his PowerPoint. So he's head of design at Department for Digital Transformation of the Presidency of the Council of Ministers of Italy. So his presentation is practical tools for digital service designs and designers. So Marco, I'm giving you the floor.
Thank you very much, Matej. I hope you can hear me well and you can see the presentation as well.
Yeah, we can hear you, we can see you well, and
Fantastic.
also the presentation.
So I'd like to thank Mr. Osmo for the presentation he just gave, because I think that was music to my ear, as much as some of the intervention we heard this morning about not reinventing the wheel from Mr. Eskander, about we need more coordination on the local level from Mr. Hammerschmidt, and the intervention about the overall coordination of the design effort of Barbara Ubaldi. What I'd like to do with you today is actually to explore where user-centered design has led us in terms of the tools that we provide to the public administrations and how they affect the use of digital services, and use that actually to build and advocate on the need of a broader, not simply user-centered approach, but human-centered approach. and how much that is paired with the need, with the building of tailored and not generic design tools, because we are all borrowing a lot from the private sector, but we need to remember that the public sector has its own specific needs. And then I would like to give you a few examples where that has led us and what we're currently working on. So starting from what we can call a problematic background, well, back in the days, we could call it office-centered design, where the citizen is really a postman that is going office to office and delivering and delivering certificates to eventually maybe achieve what it needs to be done for them, and what they need and what they want in terms of services. That is because we at the beginning of digital transformation, we really built on infrastructure and technology rather than focusing on the user, and that comes from bureaucracy, which in its etymology means really powerful offices. And long story short, in this setting, each public administration is expecting citizens to fulfill their duties on their proprietary platform, which they need to register to authenticate on, learn how to use. And this really puts us in a context where process is ruling over the meaning for the final user, for the citizen. And in Italy, especially, where there is like more than 22,000 local authorities, that led to a complete fragmentation of the digital experiences of government, which of course it's not beneficial for the end user. Then, of course, with the advent of the digital transformation team, most of the techniques and the tools that Mr. Osimo mentioned borrow from the private sector has brought the focus more on the user in a user-centered design fashion, which really means actually to put us in a framework where each public administration offers citizen-tailored services on a single citizen-friendly platform, which is, I mean, the ruling of meaning over processes eventually, and that has led, just to make an example, to the app EO, which wants to be the single point of interaction for the citizen for every digital services done by the government at every level of the government. And this is really trying an attempt to try to hide the complexity of bureaucracy, but hiding it's not the solution, and cannot be the only way. We need to tackle all the different levels. So with this approach, we could say that there's still something that it's not properly working, because if we look at the numbers, while the offering of online services, it's pretty much in line in Italy with the European Union, the number of e-government users is still pretty much way below the average of the European Union. And we discussed this a lot. We discussed this a lot, and we thought a lot about this. And the one of the key reasons we found was that user-centered approach, of course, is necessary. And while this is necessary, we need to support the whole network of stakeholders that are necessary to actually deliver services to citizens. So that's why we advocate from user-centered to human-centered design. What does it mean? Of course, we need to start from the citizen at the core with their own touch point, with their own devices, to whom we need to deliver services, but each of those services requires civil servant actually to operate, and their organization especially, whose ICT systems are often built and maintained by third-party suppliers. And if not, they still rely on technologies such as the cloud platform, which are provided by suppliers. So, while switching this perspective to citizen-centered design is necessary, the overall quality of the services that are delivered to citizens is dependent on this whole complex network. So we must remember that we operate in a government-to-government to citizen complex environment, which required a coordinated change behavior strategy. So we looked at the literature and how that could be done. There are different levels and different layers on to do that, and the government is especially good on coercive, even though, as Mr. Osimo said, probably on the design standard we need to be more strong in the enforcement and the control of the implementation of those. But we also need to make sure that in order to support this network of stakeholder, we operate on the whole spectrum of persuasion, of also seductive and decisive strategies. And those are the tools that we put in place. So all of these are connected. We start with guidelines that are really pointing at what is the end goal, what is the baseline for the design of a digital service should be. But then we want to make sure to connect it to practical guidelines that are looking not just to administrator, but also to civil servant that most often are the one that practically put in place strategy, both in terms of implementation and procurement within local authorities. And on the same level, we put methodological kits that are actually step-by-step examples on how they can run a design process in their own public administration. And of course, all of this is building then on standard of the design system, which comprise both technological kit and templates that we will see later. So let's make a few examples of that. First of all, when it gets to methodological toolkits, we want to look at the whole chain. As Mr. Osmo said, it's not just about the design of it, but it's also how can we organize a process of a service design. How can we comprehend the problematic framework and the stakeholders that are needed to deliver that service? How can we eventually, of course, design solution for it, prototype and validate? And for each of these steps, there are some examples that can help really the civil servant to go through it. How to build persona, how to describe a user journey, how to make a service blueprint, and so on and so forth. What does it mean tailoring for public administration, though? Typically in service design, the user is at the center of the ecosystem map. Just to make an example, on the left, you can see one of those. While other users and institutions are framed on the periphery of it. In order to really make sure that the civil servants can understand that they are in such a complex network, we modified and target and tailored those tools with the touch points and all the different touch points where the citizen can access a service at the center, and then both the users in the end user, the citizen, and the middleware user, the local authority stakeholder. And this is, for example, how do we use that in co-creation session, really hands-on. Another example can be done, and I think that this is best practice now in each country in Europe. We have, of course, a whole set of tools that are helping with the interface design and design standard, how to prototype it and how to pair it with code to quickly deploy solutions. But we soon realized that some smaller local entities do not have the competencies, nor the money, nor the time to do that. So we started packed all this reasoning in templates that started from larger municipalities. Then we evolved it into small municipalities. We are looking also at provinces and branching out from this solution. Again, not reinventing the wheel. We also built a school template that is now evolving for larger groups of school and universities. Now, coming to my conclusion, I think that what I'd like to stress out today is that the end user, the citizen focus and user-centered design tools are necessary, but not enough to succeed in digital transformation. The users within the public administration, the civil servants and the decision maker are enablers and multipliers of our efforts. Government to government to citizen setting require human-centered approach. So looking at the larger ecosystem of stakeholder and treat all of them as users. And eventually when we look at design tools, it's not sufficient just to carry over the traditional service design tool that are proven and built on the private sector, but we need to make sure we tailor it for the competencies, the degree of familiarity with design that each and every public administration has. And then I'd like also to open up a question, which is, given this multi-stakeholder environment, when everybody is asked to build on and contribute to a complex national design system, how can we be better in orchestrate organically this ever-increasing multi-stakeholder system at scale? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marco Maria Perazzo. Thank you for the question from the stage. And speaking of questions, again, if there's comments, questions, whatever from the audience standpoint, just type them in either into the Q&A, which is preferred, or in the chat. And then at the end of the session 3A, we're going to have about 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A, and we're going to address them. So moving on, next up is Mr. Patrick Pawlowski. I would like to invite him on stage. Thank you very much. And as you are preparing, let me just do a brief introduction. So he is coming from the Ministry of Investments, Regional Development and Informatization of the Slovak Republic. And his the title presentation is Unified Design Manual as a Facilitator of Human-Centric E-Government. So Mr. Patrick Pawlowski, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Matej. Please just tell me if something goes wrong with the presentation or the voice.
Everything is okay.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry. Today, I came to share our experience from Slovakia with, from our effort of improving not only like visual part, but also like the general experience with e-government from a perspective of user. As the title of the presentation suggests, one of the tools, one of the main levers that we use as a lever for the change is so-called Unified Design Manual, which we actually lately push towards design system as such. And I would like to just tell you a little bit about how we use it as the lever of change. So as it was introduced with me, I'm part of a behavioral research and innovation team at the ministry that is basically tasked with governing and monitoring digital performance of Slovakia and in the e-government. We came around 2019, and a year later we actually voluntarily took the task of actually solving status quo of e-government, especially concerning its usability. So just to illustrate the baseline from which we start, I just point out a few statistics from international rankings. For example, you may know the DESI index, where Slovakia is unfortunately underperformer, as well as the user-centric benchmark of the European Commission, which is on the right. Fortunately, in both of them, Slovakia doesn't belong to the above average performing countries. And in practice, basically, this manifests, for example, like this. On the left side, you can see the variety of visual identities and designs of web pages of public bodies. On the right side, you can see a variety of designs of public digital services. So this is basically the baseline from which we stem right now, these days, these months. Basically, as you may see and derive from the images, the baseline is that the communication of state in digital ecosystem, digital reality is often pretty confusing and bureaucratic. People tend to have problem understanding, finding information they came to find, etc. The user feedback is not suddenly collected. As you may see, the visual identity of Slack that is inconsistent, usability is questionable in many times, etc., etc. So there is, of course, many reasons why this is or was the baseline until recent days. One of them is history of decentralized e-government. The ministry where we are based is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 6 years old, which doesn't mean that there was no governance of e-government before. It only points or relates to the second point, the second factor that for a long time we lacked standards and there is enforcement. I think alongside that, we also still in today we see that public administration in Slovakia lack also the capabilities to actually do design, to develop and operate digital products and services in more usable and user-friendly way. So as I suggested, one of the main levers that we are using currently to change this status quo is the so-called unified design system, which is basically, in a nutshell, currently a library of user interface components and bits and pieces, and as well as user experience guidelines, methods, principles, manuals, how to actually do it. So just to illustrate, I mean, by the UI library, just of course, if you are not familiar with the design system, imagine just chunks of code. In our case, it's HTML and JavaScript with a description of physics and proper use. I'm glad that Mr. Osimo mentioned Britain, as we take them as a positive example in the government as well. Basically, how this all started is that we forked their design system, made a copy of the library, and start working on its small but necessary customization for Slovak context, which is illustrated basically by the image you can see. If you, this is basically how it looks. On the right side, you can see the patterns, let's say the heading, footer. On the left side, you can see the small items like colors, typography, etc., some primary buttons. So, of course, I mean, the UI part is not sufficient, of course, because basically you can implement great and a nice user interface library wrongly, you know. So it's not sufficient to have just the component side. That's why we recently started working on this UX side of the design manual, which basically is the same thing but different content. This content relates to how to properly, you know, implement various procedures, methods, principles during the development and during the operation of your digital products or services, which of course includes like how to do surveys, define personas, when to do it, how to do customer journeys, what to actually measure on your site, how to do it, etc. So these are mostly so far text guidelines, but we are, for example, if you might be interested, thinking about video tutorials, etc. The main point is that having the library, regardless of its content, whether it's only UI or UX guidelines, is definitely not enough from our experience so far. Why? I mean, if there is no enforcement of actual usage, the customers of it, like the other public government bodies, would most likely, in your case, it was in our case, take what they like from this unified design manual and they then merge it with their already existing design manual and then create some sort of hybrid. So if you are aiming to actually unify the visual identity, I definitely recommend you to enforce its usage very closely, and I will come to that soon. Plus, there's one more point. Unless the unified design manual, in our case, until it was really strongly enforced, the discussions we had with other ministries and other public bodies when it came to designing actual digital products or services was mostly concerned, not because of us, but because of them, about their visual appeal, or not much about the content or structure. So that's what we would like to talk about more when we are trying to actually design something usable. But from their side, it was always questions and doubts about the visual appeal, etc. So that is why I would like to share with you our like implementation strategy, which we are actually beginning to implement in these months. It has basically 5 steps. I really recommend you to make it, if you are going to develop your own, make it mandatory, so you don't have to spend much time discussing whether it's pretty enough or not. Basically, it helps to shift the discussion during actual work on development towards what you want to discuss and what concerns the usability more. I already mentioned enforcement. It's very important. Without it, I mean, some perhaps will voluntarily do it as you would like them to do it, but many of the public bodies would most likely may ignore you, etc. That was the case in Slovakia before we came around, actually. The third part, or the third measure of our implementation strategy, concerns also implementation support. So what our customers, which are public bodies, appreciate the most is that we not only tell them what to do and how to do it, but we also, if we have enough time, actually help them do it themselves if they ask to it, if we have enough time. So we definitely also, for example, organize and orchestrate design sprints, or we create some prototypes for them, wireframes, etc. We help them develop correct surveys, implement their methods properly, etc. The fourth measure that we are testing currently is positive incentives. So we actually, as part of creating open calls for other public administration, we incorporated actually implementation of this design manual into the open call. So where there is money, there is a will. I would simplify it as that. It definitely helps penetration of the user manual in our case. And last but not least, very important thing which are we perhaps underperforming right now, but we would like to improve in future is community management. And I'm not talking only about the community management in terms of our potential customers, ergo our partners from different public institutions. We also engage civic community of designers, of developers, because most of the institutions outsource these kind of services to private contractors. That's why it's important to also brief them. What are your plans with this design manual, how to use it, etc., etc. I will stop slowly here. Maybe last thing I would like to share with you is that since we are basically at the beginning of the transformation, I don't have any interesting numbers as of yet. Maybe in 1 or 2 years from now, it will be different. What I can share with you are some of the insights from the experience so far. As I already suggested, making this kind of tool mandatory helps to shift the discussion towards what you really want to deal with when you are trying to achieve usable services. So I definitely recommend to that. We already start to feel in our meetings that the discussion about the sex appeal of the layout of the user interface is not opened as often as it was a year before, and people are more concerned about the content and the structure, which is great. The second thing, second insight that I can share with you from my perspective is that developers, private contractors, and designers and civic community really appreciates the policy as such, but also the tool itself. They are very much willing to cooperate and help to develop it. So they spend actually a lot of time consulting us, and we spend a lot of time consulting them, which is nice. And the last but not least, users also like it. I mean, there is very few user researches already done on not only prototypes but live versions of websites or services that are using our design manual. But from those little research that has been done, I can say that I think we are going the right way. So I very much recommend or very much encourage you to do the same. And if you would have in the future any questions, perhaps according to how we done it, don't mind to ask. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick Pawlowski. Thank you for this insight, and we're looking forward to hear and see you again in a year and two with more results, as you mentioned. Let me just move on straight to the next speaker from the session. So that would be Mr. Jascha Vrabec. He's already joining us. I'm stopping the sharing here, so introducing, and let him prepare the setup. So he's head of the office at Supreme Court of the Republic of Slovenia, and he's going to talk to us about the procedural justice. So Mr. Jascha Vrabec, we hear you well, we see you well, and we see the presentation. So off you go.
Thank you very much, Matej. Thank you, everyone, for this interesting communication, interventions, and for the invitation, for the opportunity to present the project of the Supreme Court regarding court users. I'm talking about procedural justice. This is the way the state shows appreciation to citizens. So anytime someone is involved in police, prosecution, court proceedings, there is a message the state is sending to them, whether they're treated with dignity, with respect, whether they're informed enough, and whether they have the opportunity to tell their side of the story. Why this is important? Because it is one of the biggest factors influencing trust in the judiciary. I would like to return to the minister that started today and underlined the importance of trust. So the judiciary can improve trust in its work by making procedural justice better, by giving this feeling, the perception to the user that it cares about them, that the problems are important. Of course, there are other factors as well, like distributive justice, the feeling whether the law is applied equally, whether the decisions of judges are equal. The judges are independent, so this is their part. There is a third factor, the feeling of efficiency. If people feel that procedures are efficient, that law decisions are enforced quickly, then they will have a better trust in the judicial system. But the system, the government, the administration of the courts can improve this feeling of procedural justice the most. So I would like to share now the IQ justice problem. It's improving the quality of justice project. The users were one part of it. We are very proud of it. This project was awarded the biggest award possible by the Council of Europe, the Crystal Scales of Justice in 2019. And it also got the User Experience Design Award in Berlin in 2019. You will see why. We wanted to address the quality of judicial work, the transfer of skills and knowledge, and as I was saying, low trust in the judiciary, and these problems had to be addressed with limited human and financial resources. We had a lot of goals. We wanted to increase the quality of judicial activity, increase the competence of court staff, have a better satisfaction of court staff and judges with working conditions within the judiciary, improve the communication between judges, the communication with court users, foster judicial self-governance, and increase trust. I'm showing you the timeline of the project because it's really important that you understand that these things take time. So already in 2015, the president of the Supreme Court started the strategic 6-year program. And in the opening of judicial year, we said we are going to embark on this project, improving the quality of justice. Then we had visits in all courts in Slovenia, presenting things we want to do to judges and to court staff. In 2016, IQ Justice Steering Committee was created. And then we had workshops and research with judges. And in 2017, we did the same for court users and other stakeholders. I was the head of this group of court users, and I will show you what we have done. And only after a few years, we were able to deliver some deliverables and promote the activities. This is the scheme of the organization. So there's this steering committee. It is really important that we had the support of the top level management, of the president of the Supreme Court, of presidents of courts, top level court management. We also included other stakeholders as the Ministry of Justice and the Judicial Council, so it will be a common project. And as I was saying, it was divided into 3 groups: judges and court staff and court users. The former director of the Judicial Training Center took care of the groups for judges and court staff. They had a lot of workshops, supervision techniques. The idea was the transfer of knowledge within the system. As I was saying, we were trying to understand and do what we can do about the judiciary on our own. The trial is a comprehensive experience. It's not only what you see on TV that goes on in the hearing room, it's the document you receive, the summon you receive, the information you get on the internet about the procedure. It's the way how people treat you when you come to court, whether you find your way inside the court, what are the holes, how does the hearing room look like, when you go to court staff, whether you get the documents or not. So it's a big piece of micro experiences that unites together in a common understanding. At the Supreme Court, we've been doing quantitative satisfaction surveys for a long time. We are running now the 5th version, asking in a general telephone interview the general public. Then we have specific questionnaires for court users coming to court, an online questionnaire for legal professionals, and an online questionnaire for employees. So we are quite extensive, but it gives you only some answers. So we went into qualitative research. This is a map of the methods. On the right side, you can see what we were able to do with quantitative surveys. So we were able to understand how much do users see some problems as problematic, some issues as needing more attention, but we were not able to say why. That is why on the left-hand side with the qualitative research, you can see that we went into literature review, observational research, ethnography, participatory research, workshops, and interviews with court users. We took into consideration the principles of service design. We wanted it to be very user-centric. Let me tell you something. The judiciary is quite a conservative world, and many times courts feel that they know everything. Of course, iura novit curia, that's a Latin proverb meaning that the courts know the law. It is true, but courts have and had to realize that they don't know all the problems users are facing. They might think they know, but they do not. So it was our goal to dig deeper into this and focus on the user. Then we wanted to visualize things, which is something new for the judiciary as well. We were doing prototypes, we were questioning what we don't know, and you will see we were talking in journeys to make it easy to understand. So we did workshops with a lot of stakeholders, not only judges and court staff, lawyers, attorneys, and so on, also with translators and similar. So there were a lot of workshops, a lot of talks that were really interesting about how to improve communication of courts with users. We went into observational research, looking at people coming into court buildings and following them, whether they get the information they want or not. We had interviews. This takes time, but you get a lot of information from these interviews. How were people feeling? What were their thoughts? What they were lacking when they came to court and so on. We went into ethnography. Of course, nowadays, everyone is searching for answers online, and we could see that there's a mess. There's a big, big mess because there's no consistent message coming from the courts, from us, explaining how things work. And in this situation, there are a lot of legal professionals explaining things to people, and they might mislead them. We also asked courts to count the frequencies of what's happening inside their buildings, so we had a better view of this situation. And based on all this research, we came to some conclusions. On the left-hand side, you can see the problems the courts were facing. There are problems due to the lack of knowledge and information. People do not know what to expect when they come to court. We are used to American TV series, and people do not even understand there are different systems of law. There are problems with the organization of work, communication problems within the court and to outside users. Communication problem channels, how to get information through the email, through the regular mail, over the phone, and so on. Problems with the navigation and objects. People come to the court and it's a stressful experience. They don't know what to expect. Feeling of risk and exposures, and the image of the court. Unfortunately, the courts do not have a good image among the general public. It is improving, but the image is still low. There's lack of information. There's this negative image. These are external factors. People come to court with wrong expectations. The actual experience is not nice. It's stressful. Even for people working at courts, okay, it's a bit less, but when a regular citizen comes to court, it's similar to when they come to the doctor. You want it to be over and you don't know what to expect. So there's a low quality of experience, which turns out negative rumors, which reinforce the negative image, and we have this downward spiral influencing the whole view of the judiciary. The image today is that it's public administration, there's loss of time and money, there's a helpless individual against the system who's feeling lost, uncertain, and doesn't know what to expect. It's almost dehumanized. That's not our idea. That's what we got from the research. We wanted to change. We wanted the judiciary to be seen as a public service providing support, satisfying needs of a fair and effective trial. There's a two-way communication so that the person feels secure and has knowledge about the situation, feels respect and human dignity. So what were the deliverables so far of this project? There's a general project document. It's really long. We had the luxury of having time and understanding of the leadership of the Supreme Court. So we took our time and we did the research well, and the general project documents presents answers to our questions from all over the world, from Australia, Singapore, Norway, America, and so on. What we did were brochures on the most common court procedures and the organization of the court system. There was lack of this information, and we wanted to be the ones to explain it in a simple manner. We did short animated movies on the court system and the role of a witness. We will go on with this and make more animated movies on specific court procedures. There's a special website entitled In Court You Are, in Slovenian nasodišču.si, and there all this information is gathered, and I will show you how we came to that. And there's a really practical thing, a court location map for Ljubljana. So these are the brochures. They were intentionally made in an easy and understanding way, because more than half of the users at the courts have secondary education, and it is a complex thing. The legal language is complex. So these brochures were done by judges and by law experts based on the questions we got through the research. Then they were processed to make it a more user-friendly structure and language. But of course, people who are not lawyers might change things and the meaning. So we got it back to the judges to finalize these texts. Even though in the end it's a short text, it took a long time because the Supreme Court, of course, has to make sure that everything it issues is legal and people can rely on it. And this is the way these brochures work. There's a common pattern. There's a description of the process, some words on the duration. It's really important to know when something is going to happen. It releases the stress. Some words on expenses. And then there's this like a judicial map. It's like a map of the metro, and you know which stages take place in this kind of procedure. So it allows you to understand better everything, and some tips and warnings. There was a brochure on the court system. Who works in court? What do they do? What are their roles? And so on. There's a location map in Ljubljana. There's a lot of court buildings. There's not just one palace. And people are coming to court daily asking, okay, where is this? Where is that? So we made this for people working at the doors. And like in a tourist office, they just hand it and show them where to go. There are these animated movies on the role of the witness, on the judicial system, explaining things, how they happen in a nice user-friendly way. And there's this most important thing, it's the website I was mentioning. There's a lot of information there on the website, much, much more, of course, than in the brochures, but it's a unique information point. You have to understand that people working in courts many times are not allowed to give advice to people coming there because the court has to be independent and impartial. They cannot tell people how to write things in a lawsuit or similar, and they have to explain this in a reasonable manner. So the idea why we did this was to have unique, confirmed, objective information that everyone can point to. So in court writings, through calls, when people come in person to court, everyone directs them to this page over email and in these brochures. And there people can read more about legal procedures, and in this way understand better what will happen when they come to court and have a better feeling. So the message we try to give to the general public, but also to the people working in courts, is that every employee in the judiciary can, with his or her knowledge, work and care for the feeling of procedural justice, improve the trial experience and the image of justice, and contribute to higher trust in courts. So we hope that by e-government, e-solutions, we can improve trust. Thank you for your trust and attention, and the floor is back to you, Matej.
Thank you, Jascha Vrabec. I believe I can join a lot of comments in the chat. This was really amazing. Amazing to hear this story and so on. And we only wish that there's more of this kind of stories in institutions in Slovenia and also all around Europe. So you're probably going to be asked by people directly about more information. Nevertheless, going on to Lincoln Grixti from Malta. So as you are preparing to come on stage, take over the stage, PowerPoint and so on, let me just briefly introduce. So he's head for ICT and branding at service.gov at the government of Malta. So we're going to be listening about service delivery focused on the citizens, which is the topic. So Lincoln Griggs, the stage is yours.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the invite. As mentioned earlier, I'll be speaking about service delivery focused on the citizen. So we'll be talking about two separate subjects here, and they're very interlinked together. So it's the user experience, but this time from a higher level. So not specifically how exactly one particular screen will be looking, but more on the whole interaction and the whole workflow and the whole journey, including the backend processes. So part of the user experience is giving a quicker and a faster delivery to the citizen. And then we'll be looking into the citizen portal, which is what we're considering to be the single point of entry for the citizen, where they'll actually be able to experience the whole workflow. So to start with, the user experience mapping part. So here we'll be focusing more on the client. So what we're doing here is we're basically doing business process re-engineering to most of the services being offered by the government of Malta, and looking at user journeys in each of one of these services, together with the personas and the experience mapping that each one of these personas will be doing. This will be done to a digital transformation hub that it has been set up. And the personas, important part of the personas here is that we're looking at personas that are both the backend and the stakeholders, let's say, so from the business end, but also from the user end, and not just from a digital aspect. So accessibility and the different type of people relates to what if someone does not have access to an online system, right? And they'll be want to do this in person, for example, or over the phone, or whatever the means might be. So all of this is being looked into in these kind of processes. I'll go through one of the particular processes that we're actually reviewing at the moment. So there is, in Malta, there is a benefit basically that if you're sick for longer than 3 days, you're given a monetary allowance for every day that you're with sickness allowance basically. How the current process works is basically you go to a doctor in person. The doctor gives you a certificate, we call it the blue certificate. You get it home, doctor fills half of it, you fill the other half of it, then you scan it or you take it in person to an office, or you can just send it by email or online. But then the backend process basically is someone that's getting that scan or that physical document, reading it through and checking basically the data, typing it in, goes for validation that the bank account number is correct, the ID card number is correct, or the address or whatever other information is needed, and then the payment is effected in batch. What this means is that from the citizen submitting actually their certificate, there's around 10 days that pass until that person is actually paid. So if we had to map this current journey, so the way we're working is we actually map the current journey to collect the pain points and of the current process, so that we know what works and what doesn't. It's kind of defeats the purpose of starting over without knowing what the issues are and what the problems are. So this is one of the experiences that I mentioned earlier, how it's mapped, and we can see that there's a lot of red aspects, and mostly the first part we cannot do much about it, which is the citizen is sick, right? So we cannot really fix that aspect. But then there's the annoyance part here, where they're actually submitting and filling up the paperwork in the fourth row, and keeps on going until at the end they're also annoyed that they're not getting paid quickly enough. There's a time lapse. So getting that in mind, the next stage that we're doing is we're basically meeting with all of the stakeholders. So we're meeting and doing brainstorming sessions with our end users, but also with the business owners, right? So in this case, for example, the business owners are doctors, citizens of various types, but also the Social Security Department that affects these payments, but also the employers, for example, because if you're sick, you might want to notify your employer, and that certificate that the doctor gives you is actually the means that you are given, you give proof basically that you're sick to your employer, and that's why you cannot go to work. The mix of stakeholders, especially from the citizen aspects, from our end users aspects, ensures that there is accessibility across the board. So we don't look only at the normal personas, like whatever 35-year-old with a master's degree can use technology, blah blah blah, or cannot use technology, but also with the different skills and abilities of that particular person apart from the age groups. So in this particular process, the desired outcome is to basically reduce the touch points as much as possible, and make sure that the process is as efficient as possible. So in this case, we're saying, the first part, let's say that you have to get visited by the doctor, that cannot change, but the part of that can change is that you might get to be visited online or digitally, which at the moment is not possible because you have to actually get a physical document from your doctors. Well, you can, but then you have to go afterwards to pick up your certificate. So changing the certificate to be submitted now by the doctor rather than the doctor giving you the certificate will make that process quicker and basically online, and save all of the procedural work that was happening in the middle part. So the workflow, how it would work is that you go to the doctor evaluates if you're sick or not. They submit on their doctor's online portal, which is the My Health portal, basically, your medical assessment and how long they expect you to be sick or away from work or unable to work. It gets sent to your profile, your online portal, together with the platform's online profile. If it's longer than 3 days, which is the minimum that you need to be sick for the benefit to be affected in this particular case, it gets automatically shared with the Social Security Department, so you get paid. Now, what happens is you might need an additional touch point there, which is what you were before filling in the documentation, basically on the form, which is like my bank account details or some other aspects of the things. Should we not already have this information, you'll basically be nudged or notified to enter this data yourself on the online portal before sharing. It will also allow you to share your certificate and your medical leave of absence with your employer, for example. So you don't actually have to go to your employer or figure out how to scan the document to send it to your employer to tell them that you're sick, but this can be done automatically through the platform. Now, once we evaluated that journey, we can see that the pain points, let's say so, reduced, whereas before we had 4 or 5 separate pain points, mostly towards the end. We're now reducing them and pushing them all to the early stages. As I said, you cannot do a lot about the person feeling sick or sad because of their sick. But we're actually doing better because they are not obliged, for example, to go and have to wait in a medical building, waiting with other sick people to just get this certificate, right? So the pain point that we were not able to solve was that now there's a lot of reliance on your GP to basically enter your documentation on the online portal and actually filling up the right information and all of those aspects. So once we've drafted a new user experience design, what we'll do now is we're going back to the focus groups and testing it basically with all of the different users by building prototypes, as my colleagues before me already mentioned this part of the process, let's say so. But then even after we're live with it, it's being used, we continue to monitor this process and collecting feedback from all of the users in this platform to make sure that if there's any hindrance or if there's any problems, they're actually picked up and they get resolved quickly. So it's not a do it once and forget about it, but it's a continuous process across the board. With that in mind, the next stage for us is to have a citizen portal. So it's basically we're looking at one place where you're getting all of this information to you of all of your services in one location. So the way the citizen portal is meant to do is it's again focused on the client now. It's our single point of entry. And it's basically it's the place where you will deal with the interactions between the citizens, our users, and the government. And then here you'll be able to see the status of all your services that you requested, or your applications, or all your interactions basically with the government, and the back and forth approach. So in the previous case, for example, as soon as the medical assessment is done, the customer, our user, will receive a notification on their phone or wherever else they have allowed us to notify them on, be it website, email, phone, or whatever the case, and basically tells them that their status, their application has been submitted. So there they have ease of mind that whatever was needed from them is available, and if the doctor basically did his part of the task, let's say so, and actually filled up the online tool. So as soon as, for example, the payment is going to happen or has happened, they'll receive another notification that says the status of this particular application has been submitted. And they'll be able to log in online, either through their phone, on a mobile app, or on the web portal, or they can get in touch with the single phone number, for us, it's the 34153, or via email, or by visiting one of the offices spread around the island. And they'll basically be able to tell them and see for themselves, listen, this particular submission, you've been paid for it, or there was an issue, or we need more information from you, or it's been completed. But now that we have all of this data and all of the information, as we've seen early on in the video, some of the pain points were, yeah, but I need to know, right? I need to know that this service needs to be delivered. So now that they're on the portal, and now that we actually have information about them, the next step for us is to push services to the customers, to our citizens. So if you're automatically eligible to get something, we'll push you and will basically just notify you that because you are this particular profile, or because you applied for this particular service, or because we know this about you, we've actually given you service X without the need for you to apply for it, or for all that matters, to know that it exists. But then for services that might be a bit trickier, let's say so, because we might need a bit more information for them, we'll basically tell them, listen, based on your profile and based on what we know about you, we believe that you're also eligible for these other 561 service. You can just click here to apply, and this is either the additional information we need from you, or it might be a service that we think you might be interested in, but we don't want to automatically give it to you, right? So we think you might be interested in this particular service, but it's up to you to apply for it, kind of thing. But if they hit apply, of course, with the single and once only principle, they'll basically just collect only the information that we need from them, and they'll get access to all of their services in a single point of entry for all of their services, to both apply, but also to see the status and see what other services they are working on. And this basically, let's say the last stage, which is the citizen portal, is what we're working on and looking forward to work on in the next weeks and months, whereas the first part, user journeys, we've already started, and we're looking forward to implement more and more and more of these services and focus more on our customer now and on our citizens. And that's it for me. So I'm really happy to take any questions from you after the next session.
Yeah, true that. Yeah, thank you very much, Lincoln. So let's just go to the last one in this session, and then we'll open up briefly to the questions. So already joining us on stage is Saskia Verberen, Domain Manager for Transformation and Innovation at BOSA, Belgium. So Saskia, we're giving you the stage. We're looking at the presentation. We see you, we hear you. So the stage is yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Matej, for the invitation and for the introduction. So, as you all know, in Belgium we have a decentralized government, and I'm working on the federal level, and there it's the same situation. So I'm working for a federal service that is offering transversal services to the other, let's say, business government agencies. And I will be explaining today how we're trying to scale up human-centered design in governments. So I'm responsible for a center of expertise for human-centered digital government. And what is our mission? So we enable the transition to a human-centered digital government by fostering innovation and offering capabilities to the federal agencies. What are our guiding principles? I won't take long because you know them all. We put people first, we spark innovation, and co-creation is also a very important element. So how do we do that? What is our offering? First of all, we try to install design in government. We support and coach teams with tools, trainings, and expertise to build these capabilities. Second, we experiment solution or workable solutions that our partners could easily use. And then we really try to offer these solutions into productions, and we install finally communities. About the design aspect in government. So what do? We have what we call a digital playbook. It's a toolbox that we offer. It's publicly available on digital playbook .belgium.be. So all public services can use it. It contains tools, it contains videos. So as explained in previous presentations, everything is available on service design, design thinking. So we adapted a bit that they can use it in government context. So it's about the topics that you see there, also research, inclusive design, prototyping, and so on. So this is an example of concept cards that we distribute that others can use to develop inclusion by design. That's the trainings that we offer, like 3-minute introductions to certain topics that maybe some don't know yet, because we saw a few years ago in 2019 that service design methods were not generally known in federal governments. We also offer a quick scan. It's a kind of conversation starter when we meet people of other agencies. How far are they in implementing this digital transformation, this human-centered digital transformation? So it gives an idea of where the organization is standing on different dimensions. And then important, we partner with private sector experts in transformation design, service design, activation design is what we call it. And we make it available to federal agencies so they can easily have access to these experts, and they can be set into their projects to design together, to coach teams, to do specific projects on user insights. So with these experts, we managed to do in 3 years' time 106 design projects. And one of them, it's similar to the presentation we had before. One project was about putting all civic procedures of justice online. So it was a big challenge because every step, they really had the ambition to put every step online, and they really wanted to have everybody in that process. So there was a big attention on the inclusion part. So there was a first set of journeys worked out. It was really based on co-creations. Citizens were taking into the project together with all other parties involved in justice. And now they will be repeating, of course, first implementing this, but repeating the same approach for the other procedures within justice. About the experiments, I will give you an idea how we work. User feedback, of course, certain federal agencies ask user feedback. For example, they publish surveys from time to time, but we discovered that nowhere feedback is gathered over time. So there is not enough, not a good view on how the digital services are used, how satisfied the users are over time. So we did a small proof of concept with, we always try to work together with business partners to get involvement, to see if there is a real need for that. So we worked together with finance and with the police department, and we tried it out. Do users use it? What do you see in your dashboard? What insights does it give for you? So it was a success. So the next step is to scale up to a solution. Same for a pilot on conversation assistant. We did the same with the federal recruitment team. We set up a small project. We let people use it, and we decided to scale it up because that's the next step. Since some functionalities that really have an impact on more human digital government are not there yet, we try to create a solution or a platform available, delivered by private sector that can be used by others. And that's what we have today done for the virtual assistant. So the idea is that we really come to a network of connected public service bots so that we can improve support to citizens. And what's the advantage for the government agencies? Well, we install the framework contract. We work out the generic requirements where the partner should deliver solutions in. So for government agencies, there is really an ease of use to get these capabilities installed in their environments. And of course, if we deliver such a service in the end, there should also be an efficiency gain in first-line support services. For citizens and businesses, of course, we really hope to improve the experience they have with digital governments. And the same, but this is under construction. So the previous part, the solution was just launched this month. For the user feedback, we're having the same idea, and we're working on a contract to get the platform available for the federal agencies. Another aspect that we're also doing is contributing to solving the digital divide, is that we're making a training with certification. It's aimed at agencies and organizations that work for the common good, and where agency workers are in contact with people that have difficulties in using digital governments. So we give this training to really give them more capabilities, more focused on soft skills to help people to get into digital services. And this is also planned for next year. And then a last aspect that is very important in our approach is the community aspect. We really bring back into the community the learnings from the different projects and solutions that we offer. And we give a podium to the agencies that have cases that are successful or maybe not, but at least they try to use the service design approach. And we also invite speakers from academic world and private world. So I just want to conclude with the work we are doing. It's a bottom-up approach, but we're really trying to install the capabilities in partnership with private sector, so there is an easy and fast access for the federal agencies to those tools and solutions. And an important aspect, of course, the community management. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saskia Berberen. I would like to ask you to just remain on stage and invite all the other panelists also on stage for a brief Q&A. We're sort of leaning into the lunch break, but it's not urgent, so we can still take a couple of comments and so on. So I would ask David Osimo, Marco Maria Padrazzo, Patrick Pawlowski, Asha Vrabec, and Lincoln Christie to join us here on stage. And as first, I would like to ask, because we have seen, already commenting and asking from the side of David Osimo, if you can join us and maybe ask directly and comment directly. It was there were some comments. Let me just see if
I cannot show my camera for some reasons. It
okay.
says the host has stopped it.
Let us solve this quickly. So now you will be able to.
Okay.
I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Sorry, you want me to ask you a question?
Yeah. Please.
Yeah.
Please start.
No, I mean, it's a consideration. It's not just a question. By the way, thanks. This was amazing, and really the syntony and the similarities and how everything, the different presentations were aligned, and it's also a testament to the organizers of picking good speakers, and somehow the arguments were all the same. I think there is one missing issue that we need to work on, and we didn't speak a lot about it. It's about evaluating the results and assessing, showing the impact, showing the benefit of service design. You know, we have to be aware that in government, in digital government, and in technology in particular, we always come up with new things. And what we really want to avoid, especially when it comes to service design, which is about focusing on user needs, is just talking about, you know, yet another buzzword. So we need to talk about results, impact, and a lot of the service designers that are around the room, for instance, work on publishing real-time statistics on adoption, and we've seen some amazing results. I'm Italian, so I'm familiar with the speed. Finally, we managed to have digital identity used in Italy, which was amazing. But I think we should overall focus more in our discussion on showing the results.
All right. Thank you very much. If anyone wants to take on this one, comment on this one. Otherwise, I would point to a question which is in the chat. I asked Mr. Jan Lukšić to maybe ask it directly, but he said he was multitasking, and I think it is toward the Malta case. Not sure, Lincoln, if you've seen it. How is privacy confidentiality ensured given the automatic notification? I think that was in your case. If you can maybe tackle this one.
Correct. So two approaches basically. So the first one is by basically just having a decision-based system, right? So if you just told us, for example, that you had a kid, or we know that you had a kid because you registered, so by default you're eligible to any service and case that kids have, right? So children's allowance or whatever the aspects might be. In case of other service that might be a bit more private, or the aspect of might not want to share some information across departments or ministries or whatever the case might be, we don't have access to that data. So we don't know what you filled up in the application, but you know that you applied for application X. So the way we look at it is basically with an anonymized portfolio. We basically say who, other people that also applied for this kind of service also went on and applied for these other 5 or 6 or 7 services, right? So potentially you're also eligible for these 5 or 6 or 7 services. And it might be as simple as you just told us you bought a bicycle and you want the bicycle grant, right? So if we know that if you buy a bicycle and bought a bicycle grant, you might be more inclined, for example, to get an electric vehicle, because that's what the patterns showed, that people that applied for service X also applied for service Y. Then we'll basically nudge you and say, how about, you could also, if you wanted, there's the service example, which is of an electric vehicle. And it's mostly that way. So we're never gonna know exactly all of the information because we don't have a single point of storage of all of the data that's stored by the respective owner of that particular data. But we can see from patterns, basically.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm gonna ask anyone from attendees if they want to, they can ask directly live. We will give you the mic. Just raise the hand, the virtual hand in the Zoom. If you want that, you have the opportunity now for about a minute. If you don't, then in the middle of it, I will ask Saskia. There's a question from Victoria Kuga. I'm sure you maybe you've seen it in the chat and also in the Q&A. It's regarding the feedback. So it goes, I wonder how you implement the user feedback you collect. So if you can take on this one.
In fact, we're looking there for a solution, and so it will not be a solution that we implement ourselves normally. So we're writing for the moment our RFP, and we will be contracting a party that offers a platform that is interesting to use. And there are many very advanced platforms, but the challenge there is the pricing model for the moment, because the pricing should be towards impact, and that's not the case for the models that we find recently on the market.
All right.
Does that answer your question?
Victoria will be the judge of that, and she's also writing in the Q&A. With that, I would like to also wrap up this short Q&A session. There was some debate, and you were also answering in the chat. Yeah, and Victoria saying yes, thank you. In the chat, in the Q&A. So if you are still a part of this conference in the part in the afternoon, welcome to also answer the questions here. With that, I would like to invite all of us, so the panelists and also attendees, to have a short break. We've been in the conference for quite a while now. So what's happening next, let me just show you this, is obviously the lunch break. And before we go to the lunch break, I need to add also one more thing. So because Slovenia is obviously hosting this event here, it's our presidency of the council, and it's an online event, so you couldn't come here, so you couldn't see, the beauties, and you couldn't taste the beauties of Slovenian food. So this is why whenever we have online conferences, we want to show you, what it's like to actually come here. So as you are leaving to the lunch break, let me show you a short video of how food in Slovenia looks like. So bon appetit, and see you at about